Wait a minute, Tomb Raider can't be on the 3DO. The 3DO was an underpowered, impossible to program for piece of crap, garbage. No, wait. You might be thinking of the Atari Jaguar there. So although the system never had an official Tomb Raider release, the console was pretty badass as a matter of fact. You gotta keep in mind it failed mostly due to price point, a terrible launch, and lack of games. Now, it did have a decent number of games, but just not compared to its contemporaries. It didn't fail, however, due to lack of power, at least initially. Now, when the Saturn and the PS1 came out, yes, it was outclassed, but before that point in time, the 3DO was a very powerful home console. Powerful and expensive. It had good 3D capabilities for the time, CD media storage, and even great 2D ports like Street Fighter II and Samurai Showdown. And many of its games saw successful ports to the other 3D platforms, like the 3D Racer Need for Speed went over to the PS1, for example. And many of the ports to the Saturn actually looked better on the original 3DO platform, since often the Saturn programmers couldn't be bothered with programming in the transparencies that the original 3DO version featured. But back to Tomb Raider, here we have an early alpha port by XProger. It contains the cave and home levels of the original Tomb Raider. Running here on actual hardware, the FZ-1 model output via S-Video in 240p mode, line doubled by my RetroTink. And frankly, I'm shocked. This port is only about a month in development with just bare bones optimization, and it runs really well. On the top, we can see 3 rows of numbers, frames per second, update time in milliseconds, and render time in milliseconds. So you can basically see how the game is performing at any point during this footage by just looking there.
Right. Now I'd better take off these wet clothes.
Now, the frames per second mostly hovers in the mid-teens. It dips and it grows depending on the areas, enemies on screen, etc. So, for example, there's a debug camera you can play around with and zoom all the way out, and here we get a crisp 60 frames per second because the game isn't rendering a damn thing. Now, I'm not sure what frame rate the PS1 and Saturn games run at. At least the PS1 version feels higher, but I'm not exactly sure how high it goes. Either way, the astonishment that is actually running on a 3DO, and the fact that this is a proof of concept, makes me totally forgive any chop that I'm experiencing. Should also note that I'm using the AB mode 3DO, i.e. the version that can output 480i or 240p. Sometimes flipping the switch can adjust game speed, but having played it in both modes, there seems to be no difference here. So I opted for the prettier 240 progressive mode. Now, switching over to some emulated footage, you're going to see that the main visual differences between this and the PS1 version are both how the textures blend and the draw distance. So the PS1 version draws out much further than the 3DO is currently doing, and the textures are also better blended. You see on the 3DO version here, the textures more so look like horizontal rectangular strips. Now, I know that Tomb Raider also came out on the Saturn, on the PC, on every conceivable console known to man, but comparing the 3DO to the PS1 version just seemed more apt to me. Tomb Raider just seemed to be more of an iconic title on the PS1 in my mind anyways. I don't know, it just kind of made sense in my mind to compare these two versions. You can yell at me in the comments below if you'd like. Now, being an early alpha, there are of course some glitches when you jump down a long distance. Sometimes the world disappears for a second and has to kind of draw back in. And there's also a level select, but the loading is so long that it makes it seem like maybe the game crashed.
Welcome to my home. I'll take you on a guided tour.
So this is super early, but also incredibly impressive at the same time. Not sure how many levels will ultimately be ported here. I know right now a lot of the effort is going into optimization, but I'm excited to see what the next build looks like. The one that I'm working off now was built on 11.9. Now, if you'd like to go ahead and check this out, I'm gonna go ahead and put a link in the description below where the creator is hosting the file. You can either burn it onto a CD and play it on your actual 3DO, or you can emulate it on your PC. Aside from that, I do appreciate all of you guys watching today. If you like this type of content, please make sure to subscribe, hit us up on social media, click that notification button, all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time.